Oh, y'all, I'm back. It's Friday. Took a little bit of a break from going live on Fridays with my How to Align with Transformation, but I had the urge today. This was like so not planned. I got my little post-it note to try to keep myself focused. But I guess I need to get back on my game here. I recently had someone find my YouTube channel that I was not expecting, and they were like, "Why did you stop? Like, this content is really good." And I was like, I stopped mostly just because of the season. Honestly, the past so it's February 21st, so I'd say my last live was maybe like November. The holiday season for people in mental health, yo, it causes the mental health counselors to have their own mental health issues. So I just kind of took a break from it. And then I also had, if you've been following my story, modeling going on, and I had a couple shows this winter. So priorities just shifted for a little bit. But that was me kind of going out and living my life so I could kind of get a different perspective to kind of come back here and talk with y'all about what does mental health look like? How can you tap into it? And what is recovery? Because, if you didn't know me before, let me just go ahead and do my little spiel. My name is Sarah Wilder. I'm a clinical social worker and clinical addiction specialist, and I help people build a lifestyle of recovery for mental health and substance and process addictions, specifically through the relationship of food. But that's a huge niche down. But so I wanted to really just come on today and talk about the weekly recap, because I tend to have these themes in my sessions that, I see on average now. I kind of cut back on my client load recently, maybe about 3 to 4, 5. I had 6 sessions in one day last week, but my average is about 3 to 5 sessions a day. And most of those sessions, they're different people. They don't know each other, but they tend to overlap in terms of a theme. And given that, not only the holiday season was busy, but then we went right into a really big societal shift, and that affects me. I wanted to, and then also given that it's February, and although Black History is any time of the month, and that is my philosophy, but February is Black History Month. And so I wanted to say something specifically to people who are trying to figure out how to balance their own consciousness expansion and trying to prioritize what Black History Month looks like for them, whether they be a white ally or even a person of color, through my story, because that's kind of how I do, is I'm going to lead with my vulnerability of not being perfect, and speak from my narrative, and maybe it can help someone else who is trying to figure out what that looks like for them. But it really comes down to this. So the theme this week, what popped up a lot in my sessions, was not necessarily about Black History Month. It was about how do you deal with the passion for advocacy and justice while also not burning yourself out. And it really centered around this. I have a lot of different types of clients. I have clients that deal with chronic pain. I have clients that deal with depression. I have clients that deal with substance abuse recovery. I have clients that, all across the spectrum, right? And the common denominator is really usually this, is that I tend to work with very passionate people who don't understand how their brain works, as well as how that impacts their body and in turn their life. So a lot of the work that I do is internal family systems, internal systems, not only for themselves, but for their health now at this point, and helping people understand their emotions and how they impact thoughts, behavior, all that jazz, right? And so it really came down to passion is painful, right? But pain is also what creates change. And so passion is usually when we have, even before I kind of owned and, changed my mindset and my lifestyle, I never really considered myself a passionate person. But if honestly I pause and I look back, I'm like, damn, I've been passionate for a long time. And that was pretty much the issue, is that my passion for life and doing and people, honestly, as much as I love people, I don't always like them. And that's usually more of a reflection of just my own not taking care of myself, is that my passion would get out of control. and how that really interacts with the brain is that passion is a lot of times an emotional experience, is that we feel like either a desire for something or so we go after, we are go-getter. So me as an entrepreneur, I have to be very careful with my own passion because I have such a passion to help people that it takes away from me. It takes away from taking care of myself. So the transformation that if you go back and you know, kind of trace my story, which I'll be working on content to help kind of consolidate all of that. But my transformation in life was really a matter of how do I balance my passion and and apply it appropriately so it actually is impactful and intentional, right? And a lot of my content it talks about whether it be my story or what I've learned along the way of building, you know, my narrative and my experiences in life. And a lot of it really came down to how do I regulate my own passion? And I think for a lot of, and I'm not speaking for all white people, but as a white person, I've done a couple of videos on my relationship with race. I grew up in a very secluded part of the United States. I grew up in a small town. I grew up with very little diversity in terms of, like I graduated with 8 people of color, and that it's a mix between African American as well as Indian and you know, like it's just, that's just where I grew up. That's where my parents met. That's where I spent the first part of my life. And then I didn't really understand my own passion for diversity until my mom was like, yo, I don't do the snow anymore. I'm going to North Carolina, whether you're coming with me or not. She stayed until I was out of high school. And then I ended up going with her. There's a lot of different reasons as to why I did, but that's kind of the gist in the nutshell of it. And it wasn't until I went to East Carolina University, which is in Eastern North Carolina, and I got like kind of immersed in just, I didn't have to be, like it just kind of was random. Like my roommate freshman year of college was a Black woman, and I just started getting more exposure to culture. I didn't have that growing up. So when I talk with white people about their relationship with race, many of them are extremely confused because it doesn't necessarily, like, you know, they can't even really get to the concept of people being inherently racist because they don't even understand how to understand their own experiences at first, right? And so I tend to, over time, and it doesn't go every direction that I typically wanted to because everyone has to have their own free will, but I usually end up uncovering a passion for people. And that's where they're comfortable. So this is where it becomes passion is pain, and pain is what facilitates change, is that people get stuck in their comfort zone because now it becomes a pain issue. And it's not just physical pain, but emotional pain is 90% of physical pain. And it is its own pain in itself. So I tend to deal with people and help them understand how to deal with pain, and it automatically uncovers passion, if that makes sense. And then race gets built in there too, but I have to start from like the core stuff in order for people to get to the point where they can understand, oh, how do I'm actually an ally for a person of color. However, they're not necessarily a safe person, a safe ally, because they have not done that reflection, because that reflection is freaking hard and it's painful. Do you know how much pain I've put myself through the last 7 years of, and some of it I can't do on my own. I've had to use, whether it be my relationships, my therapist, physical pain. Being in the gym is a matter of me normalizing pain for myself. So then that way emotional pain is not as much of a barrier for me to change and to actually put action towards going after the things that I want. So I felt like this was, you know, I've been pretty quiet this month, not only just because my own personal energy levels, but specifically when it came to Black History Month, not because I'm going to stay quiet the rest of the time, but it's because I had to go inward this year. Like in previous years, if you go to my blog on my website, I try to highlight a clinician of color that is doing work that's great. And because I learned from them mostly. I would not be who I was if it was not for people of different cultures and ethnicities. And that's mostly from my professional, like working in the prison system, working in community health, community behavioral health, stuff like that. And I really just wanted, so generally speaking, before I get into the Black History Month stuff, is that passion is a huge responsibility. And it can be one of the biggest issues of regulation when we're talking about mental health and recovery, is how do you understand how to budget your passion? I just kind of came up with that. But it's more like, because it is an energy that can propel you into pleasure very quickly. And this is where I see, like, a lot of people, and why I think my addictions background is I have, going to be bringing that to the forefront of a conversation in relationships specifically, is because feelings are somewhat pleasurable. And that's what we've built a construct of love around. And it's not sustainable if you don't understand that we need both pain and pleasure to be balanced individuals. And I recently found a content creator who is a therapist, a Black woman therapist, who articulates this so freaking well. Like, she spoke to my soul because I was not able to get the words out, appropriately. And I can find content if you're interested in her. But her view on mental health is so spot on, and something that I've been trying to I articulate with my clients, but I don't necessarily do it on the grander scale, because I think she needs to. She created that content, that is hers, and I will promote it all day. But it really is that mental health has become a way of protecting ourselves from pain and sitting in pleasure all the time, which is also causing a lot of the byproduct issues of, like, loneliness, domestic violence, relationships, dependency within personality, just individual, as well as codependency, which is more just that domestic violence. But it can be generally, like, my codependency showed up in food, because I was never one that was fully dependent on people or a substance, but I was with sugar and I was with food, right? So that's where it's like, when we get stuck from the outside in perspective and we don't understand how we work from the inside out, we're not really able to understand that concept of balancing passion, which can be pleasurable. It's like, it gets us out there, it gets us dopamine, it gets us interacting with community and people. And then, but when we drop off of that, we don't always know how to rebalance ourselves. And because that affects us from not only an emotional standpoint, mentally, but also chemically and physically. If that you are not prepared to understand how your emotions create imbalances with your hormones, then you're going to get a little mixed up. So that's my first point, is that passion is painful, but pain is what creates change. So if we can get that mindset and that way of thinking, and some of that is really integrated with some tough belief systems that people struggle with. I know I did, being worthy, being good enough, all of that you can actually free yourself from that and put action towards a cause or an awareness or an advocacy that you're passionate about, right? And so, speaking of Black Lives Matter, Black History Month, I have been quiet because my work previously, like, I had more opportunity in prior years to do more external recognition. I'm big on education, but this year, unexpectedly, because the political shift, and then I don't want to make it about politics. It was more of the state of despair that most of my clients feel, as well as I felt, with the societal shift in our presidency this year, is where I had to deal with some internal relationship with race things versus broadcasting more externally. And so I won't go fully into that story, because I'm still actually trying to work on the repair of that particular relationship that it brought up for me to work on. But it brought a familial relationship to the forefront, and it caused a conflict that I was completely not expecting to have a conflict with. And this happened probably at the beginning of February. So that is my own personal focus this year for Black History Month, is I had to do some work on my family systems, because I have and come from family systems where people vote for Trump. It has nothing to do with Trump. It's what his personality represents, right? And it brought up a lot of emotional things that I just needed to attend to. And so I wanted to share that in hopes that anyone who sees this, is if you are a white ally, I just put it because it's specifically probably white people that are going to deal with that potential guilt of like, oh, I'm not posting anything, or I'm not going out and supporting small Black business, or Black owned business, or you're not doing this, that's fine. If you are working on yourself, that is in alignment with the bigger issue of understanding that our American history has always been influenced by Black history, and other cultures and ethnicity history. And there is, if that is where you're at, then that's fine. But then also remember that there is long-term, like you can't necessarily always get stuck in the guilt, which is why I think, racism is a public health issue. It's an emotional bias issue, very real, external, like systemic issue as well. But since I am not in politics, I'm going to help the people that I come into contact with do what they can, that they can control, which is the work on themselves, right? And so that personal work I had to do for myself this month, and really figure out not only what I was feeling, and it wasn't even about Black history, it was about, really it came down to fear of a supportive relationship for me throughout not most of my life, all of my life. And really just the presence of a lack of empathy and compassion, which is a huge value of mine. And it was scary because this relationship has always nurtured compassion and empathy in my life. And so that is my focus for Black History Month. Not to justify, I don't really need to explain myself to anyone, but if to explain as to like, okay, well, she's, for this, and why isn't she posting a lot about Black History Month? Because everyone else is posting about it, and I just had to prioritize that focal point for me this year. And a lot of it came down to, I had to deal with like, okay, I do not want to feel emotional pain, and I have to prioritize this relationship over just forcing my expression to be a matter of like, pay attention to Black history, do this, go support a small business, a Black-owned business, a Hispanic-owned business, a woman-owned business. Those are DEI efforts in your lifestyle. That is actually going to be mental health in your lifestyle, because not only are you supporting other people in your community and focusing on economics where you can have the most impact, it doesn't mean that you have to listen to the news every day. That at this point, I mean, unless you are equipped to deal with your triggers when you watch the news all you want to. But reducing the amount of exposure there, that's okay. But make sure that you attend to what's going on internally, so then that way that does show, and you can sustain in your passion for advocacy and social justice. And I'm just more speaking for my values right now, is being able to be consistent in the long run and sustainable action towards the issues that we're dealing with at large in our society. I feel like that's a good place to stop. I never checked the chat, so I saw people want to be. So you want to hear about the conflict? So I did record a video. I have not posted it, and it was more of just me expressing myself. I will talk about the conflict when I fully resolve the conflict. That's mostly because this person, I highly respect them despite the conflict that we had, but we're still trying to figure out and finding our new balance with things. Because it's not that I learned something new about them, it's just, I think it's a timing thing. And this was actually, since that like kind of prompted this was another message this week about passion, and it was a concept of timing. Is that a lot of people, if we're going to talk about labels, ADHD, anxiety, all of the diagnostics that, I give people mostly for insurance billing, but a lot of times people, they own that and they absorb that. And that's also kind of what I was speaking to about how people end up being stuck, is that really they're labels of timing, things that have happened at a different time in their life, cultivate and support these diagnoses. And then what I'm really, really passionate about, you'll hear in plenty of my other videos, is that diagnostics is a starting point. Like when you get a diagnosis of a broken leg or a fractured femur, if you really want to be clinical with it, is that you're not going to have a fractured femur for the rest of your life. You may have a fracture in your history. But so when it comes to mental health, the same concept is that we have to, it's a little bit trickier because the mind tends to attach with things. And again, it's another conversation for another time. but a diagnosis is a starting point. And so when I work with people with attention deficit disorder, honestly, it's timing and placement, is that their thinking is leading their feeling, and we have to be able to get their feeling to be balanced with their thinking in order for action and procrastination to reduce, all stuff like that. That's all a timing issue. That is a timing of like, there's a time and a place to put your thoughts first and just go and do, and impulse, and have natural impulse is really a great thing. It's a lot of creative energy too, but there's also a time and a place to fall back and not necessarily react and act on every thought that we have, right? There is a time and place to listen to your emotions, because that is an intuitive response, but there's also a time and a place to not listen to them. And so it's a matter of timing that we all have to take. And this is still pretty fresh, and I want to make sure I honor that conflict resolving to a certain extent before I just kind of like put it out there. It was like mostly about like my reaction to feeling seen. I posted a video on TikTok, and this was, but I guess I'll just go into it a little bit, is that with what I do, it literally can't be seen. It's protected by HIPAA confidentially. And I also internalize a lot. I don't ask for help a lot. I don't always reach out to, I'm that friend that you're not going to hear from every week and just not. Like, my friends understand, and they give me that grace. Could I be a better friend? Absolutely. But they understand how I give a lot of my energy towards other people who need it more sometimes than they do. But my friends know that they can always call me. Like, especially like if you call me, I know it's serious, because if you text me, that's you like, hey, I'd like to talk to you soon. But it's like, if you call me, I know I have I have less than 24 hours to get back to you, because if my friends call me, it's like serious shit. So, but I have built my relationships that way to, honestly, to be able to live more authentically. I was put on this earth, part of my purpose is perspective and helping people in service. And the people that love and appreciate me, they understand that part of me. And then once I get to where I want to be, with my financial goals, that is, I'll reevaluate, but that's just where I'm at today. So I got on a little tangent there, and that's partly why I don't look at the comments when I talk. But I hope that message is out there with someone, especially, I think, well, honestly, it doesn't have anything to do with race. It has everything to do with being human, is that if your passion is causing you pain, it's usually, I want to say it's a quick fix, but I tried to be relatable enough that it's a simple fix, but it has to be practiced in terms of regulating how your passion doesn't cause you pain. Because my passion caused me pain for a long time, and I have to keep it in balance, because it's really just a matter of time. Right now, this country is going through something very painful, but I also fundamentally believe, and if you look at it through this metaphor of, I've worked in detoxes, right? I specialize in addiction, so I've helped a lot of people, not personally like detox. I'm not sitting there holding their hand, but working in detoxes, you got different multiple disciplinary teams, nurses, doctors that help someone go through one of the most physically painful experiences of coming off a drug. But that is the one necessary thing to happen in order to create change in recovery, is that the more pain that you experience, with some regulation, will be able to create change and ultimately have a consistent and sustainable form of pleasure in life, because they have to coexist together. So I'm gonna cap it there, because I have my own admin meeting I got to get to. And that could be a good topic for another time. Is there a connection between ADHD and sexual addiction? There absolutely is. That is a whole topic, and honestly a whole training for professionals, but I can speak on it at some point. I have another list that I've been making of different topics that I want to go down in kind of this second cycle of, this is what I consider my podcast, is just kind of talks on helping people understand their questions about mental health. But it's a big one. I have a video already that I think could possibly be a good foundation. And if you go to my YouTube channel and you look up, so the one that comes to mind is called The Recipe, and that's more just understanding the mind-body alignment. But the other one is called The Purpose of Fast and Slow. And so just to kind of like dabble in that question of ADD and sexual addiction, is that really it's a matter of brain regulation and speed. There's fast processing and slow processing, and the rebalance of that is what's necessary to be able to recover from any type of addiction, regardless of whether it be sexual addiction as a process addiction. But it is also sometimes you have to consider it a substance addiction too, because if you consider the hormones that get released in your brain every time that particular behavior pattern is played out, it's a process as well as a substance involved. So, but I'll add that to my list of things to talk about in this season of How to Align with Transformation, and try to be very intentional about how I address that particular topic. So thank you for that. But I'm going to go because my assistant's waiting for me. So I will see y'all next Friday, I think. I don't know why I'm having this like weird reaction to commitment to every Friday, because I've done it for the last year. But yeah, next Friday, How to Align with Transformation. All right, you guys have a great day. Enjoy your weekends. Take care of yourselves and get some sunshine, because that will help a lot.